Right now we're in the Festival 2024, and at the end of the festival, everybody's expecting a new Ultra to shake the game. There's the standard expectation of the Celebration Ultra immediately being the best unit in the game to use. Specifically in the festival, since it's the end of the year, we want to see something insane. But the question I asked to you, how would you know if the new Ultra is capable of being the next big thing? Okay, my name's Zakashi, guys, and in this video here, we're going to be discussing Ultras that I think will have Immortal Kits. Using the word Immortal, I mean that their kits are genuinely timeless. So in the future, it's very unlikely they will see any major buffs such as platinum equipments. If Ultras start to get Zenkais, they will be the last. And in general, the likeliness of them returning to the meta is extremely high at all times. But it's a lot more complicated than it might seem. It's not just this unit is definitely going to survive because they're element, or they have one mechanic so they can last longer. Ultras in the game, they have widely vast kits, some better than others, and there's reasons for that. And that's what we're going to be deducing in this video. Let's get into this. So I've done some serious thinking and looked through all of the Ultras that we have in the game currently, and I broke it down to two things that will allow an Ultra to have a lot of lifespan. The first thing is power creep. Now there's two ways you can perceive this. You can take this as the Ultra itself that we're referring to, so whoever that might be, just simply power creeps the game in such a way where it's very unlikely for them to get power crept as well. Or the unit could just be the same standard as the meta currently, but beyond that unit for the next couple months, they don't introduce any major power creep. So for example, if an Ultra releases in January, it's less likely that that unit will get power crept because they're very likely to power creep the whole game during the anniversary, which would be 5 months down the line. Not that it's impossible prior, but it's just less likely. One thing that needs to be blatantly understood is that power creep will always exist and no unit is immune to it. Even if the unit does crazy damage to the point where you're being suffocated and you want to quit the game, it could literally be in the next 30 days that unit is feeling like crap and is not being able to do that because of a new unit that released. It's quite insane that that's the case, because imagine spending so much on an Ultra to 14 stardom, you're probably spending over 50,000 chrono crystals. That's easily, if you're paid to win, over $800 just for them to last not even a month. That's really dark. But regardless of whichever type of power creep the unit is subject to, so if it's them power creeping the game, or if the meta just isn't moving fast at that period of time, there's no ducking it. It will eventually catch up to them. Then the second thing I want to mention is player-based bias. Now this is actually a big topic and there's no way to actually scale it. Of course, we know what characters are genuinely more popular, especially in this gacha game. We've got the Fusion Warriors, Gogeta, Vegito, with their track record Gohans, but Gohan is generally popular, especially Super Saiyan 2 and the new Beast Gohan. Goku's in most cases too, and maybe a certain few antagonists, but for the most part, there's a very specific order in what characters are more popular than others, especially specific variations of them. The reason I bring this up, even if a unit completely falls off, if people like that unit, they're going to use that unit, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you look at the top 20 most used units list, Dragon Ball Legends releases that every single season, referring to the previous season. You will see that a lot of units that people claim wouldn't be anywhere near the top 10 are being used in other units that are top 10. And that's because meta tier lists are based on micromanagement. But in this usage list, it opens your eyes up further to see that people are just using characters they like. Bear in mind, those top 20 lists are based on BR70 and above. So that means the people that are actually playing the game are using units that are supposedly dead in the highest ranks. An example I want to bring up is Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. He's hitting a top 6 standard when Ultra Margin Vegeta released. I think that's absolutely absurd when he's so prone to just getting locked in by the ultimate and one-shot. But what it goes to show you is this game is just a 3v3 game. You're not always going to be subject to that one powerful unit. Even if there's multiple powerful units, if people like that unit, they will use them, but your unit still has to be somewhat good enough to just be used. You don't see people running around with heroes, do you? There's a justifiable sense of reasonability. I'm not here trying to prop G4 and say he's the best character in the game. Margin Vegeta shuts him down with ease. But what I'm trying to say is the game is a 3v3 game. If G4 was completely unusable, then nobody would use him even if they liked him, because you wouldn't be able to have fun with him even in the slightest. But there are characters that G4 can thrive over, and that's going to happen to any unit that's very popular. Ultimately, this depends on your perspective, but I think if a unit is being used in the top 20 list, specifically the top 10, so I'm going to dim it down a bit, even if they're only being used because they're popular, to be at the point where your top 10 most used units above BR70, you have to be somewhat good, even if there's units better than you that are being used less. So to conclude this second point, overall, the player base's bias will always win, and that will actually add value to the unit's life as people are using them, meaning that they can be used. Now, obviously, I formatted this video based on logic, so before I go into bringing up some Ultras that I definitely think will have long-lasting kits, I do also want to mention that we can't predict the future. So even though the unit might meet a certain amount of requirements to be extremely long-lasting, the developers might go out their way to bring in something new, a completely new mechanic that we couldn't have anticipated because we just didn't know it existed. In that case, it would change the whole basis of your arguments to find out what would be long-lasting lasting and what wouldn't be, because it adds a new element to the realm of possibility. But for now, I'm going to mention some things that make you clear of most of the game. The more of these you have in combination, the better, but these are the biggest denominators in PvP I find. We've got cover nullification, especially if it's easily accessible and if you can get it consistently. Blast armor is just a super effective way of getting through blast darts, so any range type units just get the short end of the stick. We got any type of no switching. I would have put timer counts up, but no switching is the definition of you're stuck. With timer counts up, a lot of characters bring the timer counts down when blue cards, ultimates, etc. are hit, so you really want them to be locked in forever. Any sense of vanish recovery, this makes you a good 3v1 monster, especially if you have it on the green card. That means you can consistently get it. Main abilities are good as well though, because it's one button that you don't have to wait for a card for. Card draw speed is just the highest potential of doing damage. Even if you're not doing damage, if your card draw speed is high, you'll be able to put out a lot of cards. But of course, I think this is only valuable if you're able to get cover nullification as well. But naturally, most units will do damage, so the damage isn't a thing you have to heavily consider in addition. One of the biggest ones in this day and age, buff cancellation of any kind. So we've got buff cancellation on rushes, blue cards, ultimates, and in addition to that, I'll bring up the timer count down for themselves or the allies. Anything of that sort just allows you to rotate your team in a way so that you can stay alive. This should be really basic, especially for ultras, but key and card on entry. If you're an ultra and you don't get this, you might just want to put the fries in the bag. You're probably a support ultra, and that ultra will be thriving off the life of other units. Type neutral, this is one of the biggest things in the game. Elements can absolutely slam you, so at the bare minimum, defensive neutral, but overall neutral is obviously what you want. Last two I've got here, survivability, so any type of endurance, revival, comeback, indestructible, even pure disruptions where you break their whole combo by reducing their key to 0 or destroying all their cards. Those aren't as effective as those second life mechanics, but survivability is a game changer. It literally gives you a second chance to play the game. And then for the last one, I've put any unique mechanic that is very exclusive to that unit. This is not something you can anticipate because we don't know that the devs are bringing in this type of creativity, so this will require a lot of self-assessment, and in a lot of cases it could be super subjective, but for the most part, unique mechanics will definitely thrive for a long period of time. Right, let's start with the newest ultra in the game at the time I'm recording this video. We've got Ultra Margin Vegeta. This guy is a 3v1 machine. He's able to offensively control the whole battlefield while also controlling the enemy's movements on the defensive end because of his blast counter. He has the typical things that you'd be scared of when you run into a unit. Endurance, but in addition to that, also the buff cancellations. So your ultimates, your rushes, you can't nullify his endurance, so you basically have to beat him in the rawest form, which means just straight damage for a long period of time. I'd say the biggest gem in his kit is the fact that he's able to lock in with his ultimate. When you're able to lock anybody in with their ultimate, that guarantees you a kill. It's going to do a decent amount of damage for at least the next year. So if you get low and he's right there to switch in, that main into ultimate, it's a guaranteed body. Obviously with the few exceptions of people cancelling buffs as well, but if you get through the endurance early or their first life of any type of sort, Margin Vegeta is a pure sniper. Anybody that has a sniper type mechanic, they're gonna last a long time, and Margin Vegeta is that guy, bruh. He has an explosive green as well, which is quite excessive in my opinion, but more in his blast counter, it basically guarantees him a free blue card, so his damage potential is always going to be high unless you're able to specifically play around it, which gives you less options on the battlefield. Easily see Margin Vegeta lasting a long time. He's on an amazing team as well, so that adds to his value, meaning that it's quite easy to revive him at any point in time if he does die down, so the value in his kit is able to stay high for a long time. Next one we've got is Ultra Instinct Goku. Now some people might disagree with this, but I think the Ultra Instinct mechanic is one of the most timeless mechanics in the game because you simply cannot be hit. Especially if you're running 3 Ultra Instinct users together, you can literally take the game to timers just by dodging and evading the whole time and playing off counter attacks. So you vanish and then you tap the enemy or hit a card if they do a certain output, or if you're worried, you can just float backwards again, waste your dodges, and by the time you waste your dodges, the timer counts on your switches will be back in. But that's in the scenario using 3. Let's get back into Ultra UI. This guy is also a sniper, so you know his mechanic when you're hitting the combo with him. If the enemy tries to cover change, he will drag you back in and he will spawn an ultimate, which is amazing. Which means that his ultimate can do major damage, especially if he's type advantage. It's an immediate scenario to catch a kill. If you build him towards guaranteeing kills through his snipe mechanic, it will give you that 1-up no matter what point in the game you're at. So whether it's on release or even a year down the line, which we almost are at, you're still able to catch bodies with him while also stalling on the defensive end. Now it's very evident that he's been power crept. In terms of his damage output, it's still available somewhat if you Zenkai buff him specifically, but on the defensive end he's not being able to keep up. But he's able to avoid that power creep because he's meant to dodge everybody due to his UI mechanic. Your defenses don't matter if you can't get hit. That applies to everybody, but the playstyle UI is built for is literally about not getting hit. He's also able to nullify endurance off the main ability, which is nice to get over over those that cancel buffs. He can nullify your endurance through strikes and blast if his main ability has been popped, which gives him high 3v1 potential. You have to be really careful when you're in a 3v1 scenario against him, because he can easily come back. Next, we got Ultra Golden Freezer. Now, Ultra Golden Freezer here, he's one of those guys that have a 2 life mechanic, so his survivability is there. But not just that, specifically because he has comeback, he's able to damage his opponents even when he's losing in the game. Imagine getting punished for punishing someone. That's nasty work. Golden Freezer's kit isn't anything special. He simply just does his job efficiently, which allows him to slice and dice through PvP. His green card gives him everything you need, honestly. Vanish recovery, cards, cover nullification, damage buffs, and key. You honestly couldn't ask for more, and that's only off 1 card. His 2 lives give him high 3v1 potential. His ultimate art has AoE damage, and because of the team he's on, he has a bunch of Zenkai buffs that will always keep him alive. If they drop 1 LoE buff, he's immediately back in the meta. Even with some powerful opponents, he's able to slide in instantly, as having 2 lives will always be relevant when people want to have a team that's not going to get slammed immediately. He's not the best defensively, but that's what his 2 lives are for, and his offensive power can be really high, especially if you let down your guard. He can be a real problem. And one of the sneakiest things about him, he increases your blast cost by 60. This lasts for 3 time accounts, which makes it practically impossible for you to use a blast, and if you do, you'll be completely out of key straight away. For the last one here, we've got Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. A lot of people might disagree with this one, especially considering how he's been shut down right now, but because he's a fusion warrior, it's very likely he'll continuously have value going down the line. Now, unlike other fusion warriors, he's not just a high damage machine. Any high damage machine, specifically fusion warriors as well, they don't come with defensive traits, but G4 with his counter, even if you're a trash player, he gives you the opportunity to survive a bit longer. With his counter, it means that you will have to actually one-shot him immediately, so through a rising rush or a specific ultimate with the likes of Margin Vegeta. If you can't do that, you'd be activating his gauge at least 3 times, and each time he does that, he's able to just backflip out and restart the interaction. So you need a minimum of 4 priorities against him to get around him. But of course, he's also a very high damaging unit. Right now he's being shut down, but it wouldn't take much to make him relevant again. They drop 2 more greens, even 1, and 1 green that's super good. G4's a unit people start bringing out immediately. Even if G4 can't exactly damage that green unit for whatever reason, the green unit won't always be type advantage against G4, so his counters will be very useful. You don't have to play him as an offensive power, you can play him on the defensive end as well, where you use him strictly for building up that counter, and then you bring him in when you want to avoid a big attack. It includes the likes of ultimates. Only thing you can't backflip out of is a rising rush. His explosive green's pretty good for combo starting. As a last stand unit, he has insane 3v1 potential, he has vanish recovery, and you won't have to worry about cover null because he gets it so easily. Now, to end off the video, I wanted to mention some other ultras that would need a lot more, and if you compare them based on their kit solely, you can blatantly see why they're worse. So starting with Goku Black Rose, even though he's one of the most high damaging units, he gets blue cards pretty easily, he's simply missing cover null. Just missing the cover null is enough to write him off. Everything else he does doesn't matter because he can't do long combos. And then even to extend, so if he wants card draw speed, it's in the hands of the enemy. So if the enemy switches, then he will get card draw speed, which makes him unreliable in the long haul. Early game when he came out, he was super menacing, a big problem to deal with, very scary. But long term, it became easily known that this guy is a drop combo merchant, so that you can get your card draw speed up and you can't get cover null until your gauge pretty much fills. Makes him very vulnerable, on top of the fact that most of his buffs can easily be cancelled and he doesn't even have survivability himself. Ultra Hit over here is one of the biggest victims to having a unfinished kit, at least for the long term. Early doors, this guy was menacing because his ultimate would be guaranteed a one-shot, especially during the time skip. You would be guaranteed to get a body if you time skip and hit an ultimate. However, power creep hit this guy really quickly and now his ultimate can barely kill. You'd have to juice him up specifically to get him in those high numbers. But doing that, you'd make the rest of your team a liability, as outside of his time skip, he's pretty much a regular unit. He doesn't do anything super exceptional. Yes, he can get cover null pretty easily, but that's about it. You have to work to build him up, which isn't ideal, and it's not even like his time skip is a guaranteed hit. It isn't very difficult to land it, but when you're using him, the enemy is very wary that you're going to use the time skip, so they play a certain way, which doesn't make it the easiest to land either. So you're really at your opponent's mercy, and even then, power creep literally bricks this guy because he doesn't have anything that's going to keep him in the running, no survivability. So it's very likely this guy will get consistently slammed. Ultra Broly is a sad case because I don't even think he's bad, but he's clearly not built to last a long time. His kit is based on power creep, so he's meant to get his buff and he's meant to be good for a short while, which he was, but outside of that, he's not going to last a long time because the way he works is based on him being able to survive, based on how much damage he can tank. He doesn't have any survivability. He does have disruption, so I'd call it soft survivability, where he can break your combo because of his gauge. He does have some offensive perks, but really and truly, you're able to take this guy out pretty easily. He has nothing to avoid rising rising rushes really. If a unit is yellow, you can potentially one-shot him, which is very, very annoying. So really and truly, I'd put him like Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, except his combo break isn't exactly as reliable. You can't use it on the switch-in and get the guaranteed result of you stopping the combo. You just have to hope that he works in your favor. You'd have to bring out a very specific type of game plan to take advantage of Ultra Broly, and even then, it might not be enough. But yeah, man, that's going to be the end of the video. Let me know in the comment section your thoughts on the things I brought up on this video. Do you agree with the units that I brought up for the units that will survive for a long time? A lot of them are already pretty much cooked right now, but what I mean is it's very easy for them to come back. It doesn't take much, just a tiny bit of a shift in the meta, and all of a sudden they're super relevant again. But of course, feel free to disagree, and I'm nowhere near saying these units are going to be the best units in the game. I'm also pushing the idea that if you did want to use them, you'd be able to get results with them, but of course that does depend on each meta. Power creep is coming at a rapid rate, and we've seen that since the 6th anniversary, it's quite dark for a lot of units. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you haven't already, make sure to press that subscribe button. We're on this grind to 200,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys for watching, man. My name is Zakashi, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one, man.